I didn't plan to say anything that day. Not because I didn't have anything to say. God, I had plenty. But because somewhere along the way, I learned that when your voice isn't the loudest, people treat your silence like permission. So I kept quiet. Until I couldn't anymore. I'm Hannah. I'm 39. I teach 3rd grade at a small public school just outside Charleston, South Carolina. I've never been married, never moved far. I stayed when everyone else didn't. When Dad got sick, when the roof started leaking, when the bills piled up and Mom couldn't make sense of them anymore. I stayed. My older brother, Grant, he moved to Chicago 15 years ago, chased a marketing job, married twice, divorced once, and showed up at family things just enough to still get credit for being a good son. He's the type who charms a room in 30 seconds and disappears before it's time to stack chairs or do dishes. It's been 5 years since Dad passed. 5 years since we stood in that small funeral home with the cheap carpet and the framed picture of him fishing. God, he hated that photo. And this weekend, Grant decided it was time for a celebration of remembrance. A fancy way to throw a party and call it healing. He turned our childhood home, the one we both inherited, into an Airbnb 2 years ago. I never agreed to that, but he said it was just paperwork. And I didn't fight him. I walked in last Saturday with a pie in one hand and something else in my purse. Something that mattered. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It didn't smell like lemon polish and old wood floors anymore. It smelled like lavender linen spray and hotel lobby diffuser sticks. The curtains had been replaced. The carpet was gone. The walls were white. So white it felt sterile. Grant greeted me at the door with a grin and a glass of Prosecco. Don't worry, I told the guests to leave early so we'd have the space to ourselves. Guests. He meant Airbnb renters. In our house. I forced a smile and stepped inside. Where Dad's recliner once sat was now a sleek gray sectional with throw pillows that had words like gather and breathe printed on them in cursive. The bookshelf was gone. So was the dent in the floorboard by the kitchen, the one I never let the contractors fix because it reminded me of the way Dad shuffled in slippers every morning. Looks different, huh? Grant said, tossing his keys on a marble tray. Yeah, I said. It looks clean. That's the point. People don't book nostalgia. They book aesthetic. I didn't say anything. Just nodded. He led me into what used to be the dining room. It had been converted into a long, open concept space with Edison bulb lighting and a minibar. There were photos taped to the wall. Grant with Dad fishing. Grant holding up a baseball trophy. Grant at prom. Grant and Grant and Grant. There wasn't a single photo of me. Not one. I swallowed hard. Did you pick the pictures? He shrugged. Yeah, I just pulled the ones from Mom's albums. You're probably in the next batch I haven't digitized yet. Next batch. Right. I reached into my purse and touched the spine of the small leather notebook I had brought. Dad's old journal. The one he wrote in during his last months. He never shared it with Grant, only handed it to me once and said, "When you feel forgotten, this'll remind you who you are." I had planned to place it on the table next to the guest book and candles, but now I didn't move. I kept my hand there on the leather cover, tucked safely away from the curated version of our family history that Grant had pasted on the walls. Don't get sentimental now, Grant said, topping off his drink. You never really cared about this place. The sentence came out so casual, so clean, it knocked the wind out of me. I blinked. Excuse me? You know what I mean. You never wanted to fix it up. You never had a vision. You were always too emotional about it. He said it like a flaw. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just walked into the hallway and leaned against the wall where Dad used to hang his jacket. The hook was gone now, probably replaced with something that matched the vibe. Then I noticed something blinking in the corner of the ceiling. A camera. I followed its line of sight. Another one at the stairwell. Another near the back door. He'd installed full surveillance. Not for safety. For monitoring renters? Or maybe to monitor me. I didn't place the journal on the table. I walked outside, sat in my car, and just stared at the house. I had a key. My name was on the deed. But for the first time, I felt like a trespasser. And that's when I remembered something. 2 summers ago, I'd gotten a notice from the county recorder's office asking for a co-owner's signature on a transfer request. I never signed. I never knew why they sent it, until now. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, not exactly, but because there's something unsettling about realizing the place that raised you has been gutted and rented out to strangers, and you didn't even know it had happened until the lock was already changed. I stayed on the living room couch, not by choice. The guest rooms upstairs had been renamed Low Country Luxe and Sunrise Serenity on the laminated welcome packet Grant left on the counter. Each room had instructions: no food, no shoes, no noise after 10 p.m. I guess family didn't override the Airbnb guidelines. Around 1:30 a.m., I gave up on pretending to rest. The silence in the house wasn't comforting. It was rehearsed, staged, like the house was holding its breath waiting for the next 5-star review. I stood up, padded across the creaky floorboards, and headed down the hallway. The only part of the house that still looked close to how I remembered it. The walls were still lined with old floral wallpaper Mom picked out in the 90s. The attic pull-down ladder was still there, tucked between the guest bathroom and the linen closet. Something told me to check. Call it instinct, or maybe spite. I tugged the cord and the wooden stairs unfolded with a groan. Dust fell like glitter. I climbed up slowly, flashlight in hand, every step creaking louder than the one before. At the top, it was hot, stale. That attic smell, cardboard, mothballs, and memories. Most of the boxes were gone, but one trunk sat near the back wall. Dad's trunk. Green metal with his initials faded on the side. I remembered it from childhood. He used to say, "Only the stuff that matters goes in here." The latch was stiff. I had to press down hard with my whole body to pop it open. Inside, wrapped in an old flannel shirt, were folders, yellowed, dog-eared, and full of papers I hadn't seen since before hospice. Medical records, estate planning, letters. One envelope caught my eye. It had my name written on it in Dad's handwriting. My throat tightened. I opened it carefully. Inside was a copy of the original property deed, dated 1999. The house was listed under 2 names, Grant Logan and Hannah Logan, equal co-owners. Tucked behind it was a sticky note Dad had scribbled sometime before he passed. "Don't let him talk you out of your part. I know he will try. You kept this place alive, not him." I sat there for a long time, my hands shaking. And then I found the receipts. Hundreds of them. HVAC repairs, roofing, taxes, all in my name. The last 10 years of upkeep, maintenance, and preservation, all documented. I had paid for every one of them, out of my own paycheck. While Grant posted photos from Cancun and rebranded himself as the savior of a family legacy he barely visited, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Not out of panic, out of clarity. He didn't just lie. He erased. Downstairs, the silence of the house felt heavier now. I walked to the bookshelf. The empty wall where the bookshelf used to be, and pressed my hand against it. Nothing. Just fresh paint. I slept in Dad's old recliner. It was the only thing Grant hadn't touched. Probably because it didn't fit the Airbnb aesthetic. By morning, I had decided I was going home. Not this house, my apartment. I packed the notebook, the deed, and the receipts into my tote. Left the pie in the fridge. I didn't care. Grant texted me as I was pulling out of the driveway. "Leaving already? Guests check in tomorrow. Just FYI. No. Thanks for coming. No, glad you were here." He didn't know what I found in the attic. He didn't know I had proof, but something in that text, it felt like he was daring me to disappear. I didn't reply. I drove straight back to my apartment where the floor still creaked the way I knew it would, and the kitchen smelled like lemon dish soap instead of designer candles. I placed the folder on the table, poured a cup of coffee, sat down, and stared at the name Grant Logan on the Airbnb listing page, under sole owner and host. I thought the worst part was over. I thought finding the deed, the receipts, the note from Dad. That was the peak of it. I thought once I knew the truth, once I had it in my hands, it would feel like relief. But you know what's worse than being lied to? Being erased. I was back home in my apartment the next morning, sitting at the kitchen table with the sun pouring through the blinds like it was any normal Sunday. I made coffee, though I didn't touch it. My fingers kept going back to the folder I brought back from the attic, fingering the edge, like the truth might leak out and burn me if I held it too long. Out of some twisted curiosity, I opened Facebook. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if Grant had posted anything after I left. He had. A carousel of images from the Remembrance Weekend. First slide, Grant and Dad, fishing at Lake Moultrie. Second, Grant and his wife, wine glasses in hand, captioned, "Grateful for legacy." Third, a polished shot of the house, captioned, "Built by love, restored by family." Family. Except not one photo had me in it. Not a mention. Not a tag. Not even a shadow of me in the background. I scrolled back through his timeline. 5 years of memories with Dad, with Mom, with that house. I wasn't in a single one. It wasn't just forgetting. It was intentional. He'd curated a history that left me out entirely. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger, just absence. That's when I pulled out the old photo box from my closet, the one I hadn't opened since Dad passed. Inside were hundreds of snapshots, some faded, some stuck together, some bent at the corners. And there I was, feeding Dad soup in the hospital, standing next to the roofer going over the invoice, painting the hallway alone with my sleeves rolled up and a paintbrush in my teeth. I found a photo from the week before he died. Me sitting by his bed, holding his hand. Then I flipped over the photo and saw it. In Dad's handwriting, shaky but still his. She kept me warm when the nurses forgot. That was the moment I broke. Not into tears, but into clarity. I'd spent so long trying not to make noise, trying not to rock the boat. But the boat had sailed, and I was never even on it. And that's when I remembered something. Something tiny, something petty. But it hit me like a brick. Grant had sent a press release a year ago, bragging about how he was preserving the ancestral home. He'd pitched it to some local travel blogs. I remember skimming it then and rolling my eyes. But now, I needed to read it again. I Googled his name plus Charleston Heritage Property. It popped right up. The Logan House, a modern take on historic roots, published by a boutique lifestyle magazine that apparently ate up every line. I clicked. The article opened with a glowing description of the home. Passed down from father to son. To son, no mention of me, not even as an afterthought. The quote that made my stomach flip was this: Grant Logan, the sole heir and caretaker, has transformed the family estate into a living tribute, honoring decades of tradition with modern sensibility. Sole heir, caretaker, living tribute. I wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. Then I scrolled to the photo gallery. One of the images showed the front porch with the same swing Dad used to sit on. Except now, it had a chalkboard sign next to it. I zoomed in. The sign read, "The Logan Legacy Home, preserved by Grant Logan." And at the bottom, handwritten in gold marker, in Grant's messy uppercase, "In loving memory of my father who always believed in me." There it was. The house was now branded, labeled, as if I'd never lifted a finger, as if I hadn't given years of my life to keep it standing. I slammed my laptop shut. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from knowing exactly what I needed to do next. I grabbed the folder, the receipts, the deed. I picked up my phone and scrolled until I found her contact. Louisa, Dad's old estate attorney. I hadn't talked to her in years. I hit call. She answered on the third ring. Luisa Alvarez Law. Hi, this is Hannah Logan, James Logan's daughter. A pause. Then her voice softened. Hannah, oh my God, I was just thinking about your dad the other day. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I need to know exactly what my legal rights are regarding the house. Luisa's office hadn't changed much. Same dusty blinds, same coffee rings on the fake wood desk, same soft-spoken efficiency I remembered from the year Dad passed. She smiled gently when I walked in, but I could see the flicker of concern behind her eyes. I guess most people don't request emergency estate consultations unless something's on fire, legally or otherwise. I handed her the folder, the deed, the receipts, the sticky note from Dad. She flipped through them slowly, carefully, like she was handling evidence at a crime scene, which in a way she was. Then I said it. The question I'd been circling for days. Can I sell my half? She looked up. Technically? Yes. You're still a 50% legal owner. That was never transferred, never nullified. Unless there's a revised contract I'm unaware of? I shook my head. Number, and if there was, I never signed it. She kept flipping, more focused now. I do remember something. Wait. Yes. She reached behind her into an old cabinet and pulled out a slim green file. 2 years ago, Grant submitted a formal request to transfer the deed into sole ownership. He claimed you'd be relinquishing your share. My blood turned cold. Luisa continued. It was denied. No co-owner signature. I thought it was odd at the time, but figured you two had sorted it privately. I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at the name on the rejected request. Grant Logan. Under reason for request. Sole investment and maintenance responsibility. That was a lie. I'd paid more bills on that house than I had on my own apartment. I'd spent summers sanding the deck, winters patching the roof, all while Grant was God knows where collecting brunch selfies and air miles. And now, he had the audacity to market himself as sole heir, to call me an emotional liability while he paraded around with a press badge and a plastered legacy? I looked at Luisa. What happens if I sell my share to someone else? Well, if you want out completely, the house has to be either sold entirely or one party buys the other out, unless you two enter into a private agreement. But without that, she shrugged. It becomes a business dispute, especially now that it's being used as an income property. I exhaled slowly, feeling something shift in my chest. Not rage, not grief. Something clearer. Like when you finally hear the click of a puzzle piece falling into place. I'm not selling, I said, but I want him to know I could. Luisa tilted her head. You want to pressure him? No, I said. I want to remind him that I exist. When I left her office, it was still early afternoon. Warm, breezy, the kind of Charleston day where the air smells like salt and old trees. I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I parked 2 blocks from the house and walked the rest of the way. Not like a guest, not like a trespasser, like an owner. Grant wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He only showed up when there were cameras or cocktails involved. I used my key, the one he still hadn't asked me to return, and stepped inside. The place was spotless, over-decorated, and fake. It smelled like lavender again. I made my way upstairs, past Low Country Luxe, past Sunrise Serenity, and then I opened the linen closet, pushed past the neatly folded towels. There, tucked behind a stack of throw blankets, was a fireproof safe, one I hadn't seen in years. I tried the old combo Dad used on everything. Birth year, anniversary, lucky number, click. Inside were a few files, a flash drive, and a stack of papers with Grant's name across the top. And then I saw it. What made my stomach drop? A notarized letter dated 14 months ago declaring me mentally unfit to manage estate decisions. Signed only by Grant, witnessed by one of his coworkers, filed, submitted, Denied, but still sitting there like a loaded weapon he didn't get to fire. I stood there, blinking, not crying, not shaking, just furious. He had tried to paint me as unstable, not just behind my back, but on legal record. That was the kind of betrayal that didn't even pretend to love you first. And then it hit me. He hadn't just wanted the house. He wanted me erased so completely that no one would even question it. So that one day, when someone asked about the other sibling, he could say, she was struggling. She didn't want to be involved. But I was involved. And I wasn't struggling. I was watching, remembering, documenting, and now I was ready. After I found that letter, the one where Grant tried to declare me mentally unfit, something in me snapped. But not in the way he probably expected. I didn't storm out. I didn't call him screaming. I just stood in that hallway, staring at my name in his handwriting, and felt something shift. Not rage, not fear, power. Because now I had everything I needed. I called Louisa the next morning, told her about the letter, emailed over photos of it, time-stamped and geotagged. She didn't sound surprised, just disappointed. Like she'd hoped, maybe. He hadn't gone that far. Then I made one more call. This time to Marcy, a private real estate consultant who specialized in historic homes. We'd met years ago at a charity event. I still remembered the way she said, "I don't sell houses. I sell stories people want to live in." I gave her the story, the real one. She didn't blink, just asked for the legal documentation and said, "When you're ready to make it public, I'll make sure everyone knows it wasn't his to begin with." The listing went live under a private client portal, quietly, anonymously, but visible to the right kind of buyers. And then, I waited. I didn't hear from Grant for 3 days. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a passive-aggressive comment on social media. But then on the 4th day, he showed up. Unannounced. Tight-lipped. Holding a manila folder like it was a weapon. He didn't knock. He just walked in. Same as always, like he owned the place. Like nothing had changed. "You listed the house." I didn't answer. I just nodded once. "You think you can just tank everything I built?" "I'm not tanking anything," I said, calm as stone. "I'm just making sure the truth gets a seat at the table." He tossed the folder onto the counter. "I could take this to court." I opened it. More forms, more signatures. All smoke, no fire. "You already tried," I said, holding up my phone with a picture of the denial letter. "The county clerk wasn't impressed with your solo act." That hit. I saw it in his jaw. The tightness. The flicker in his eyes like he'd been punched somewhere no one else could see. He stepped closer. "You're ruining your own legacy just to spite me." "No," I said, my voice level. "I'm saving it from being rewritten as a lie." He laughed, short and sharp. "You always were the dramatic one." I shrugged. Better than being the fraudulent one. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then I said the thing that finally cracked him. "I already accepted a private cash offer. Closing's next Friday." His face went still. Everything behind his eyes collapsed into panic. "You can't." "I can. And I did. And the contract's clean. Because I did the work. I kept the house standing. I held the receipts." He didn't say another word, just turned around and walked out. No slamming doors, no parting shot, just the sound of footsteps on a floor I paid to refinish. And that was the last time I saw him. The house sold in 11 days. Quietly, cleanly, to a couple who planned to live there full-time. No short-term rentals, no influencer shoots, just dinner on the porch and garden beds in the spring. Before I left, I walked through every room, touched the walls I'd painted, stood barefoot in the hallway where Dad used to hum off-key old country songs. And in the empty living room, I placed a small envelope. Inside was Dad's journal, the one he gave me, the one Grant never knew about. I didn't take revenge. I took back the truth. And I let it live there in the bones of that house long after we were both gone. People think power is about winning arguments or raising your voice. It's not. Sometimes power is about documentation, about patience, about knowing you were right, and choosing to act like it anyway. I didn't fight to be seen. I fought to stop being erased. If you've ever had to reclaim something that was yours, not with fists, but with facts, tell me. Drop a comment. Or just say, one. I'll know what you mean. And if this story stayed with you, I'm glad you were here for it. There are more. Quiet ones. True ones. I'll be back with the next soon.